Hi everyone, this is Neethu from Esther Stephen Consulting. We are based in Bournemouth, Dorset, and we concentrate on doing performance management and business analysis for small companies. So, a large part of what we do is study the business processes, the industry best standards, and try to adapt that for smaller companies, mostly startups, even at a pre revenue stage, so that they have consistent ability to monitor their performance. It's not just financial performance, it's for the business as a whole. Having said that, one of the questions that I get asked a lot by startups, especially at their pre-revenue stages, business processes are so many. It's very vast in terms of what you can set up for a company. But do you really need to set up all those business processes even before you are established in the market? So the biggest question on their minds is, where do we start? I spoke about this very recently in the firstborn Bournemouth Accelerator program. And when we spoke about business processes in this program, one of the things that I spoke about was dividing business processes essentially into two sets. So you have business processes that face outward, that sort of define the relationship between your business and your customer or your stakeholder, the people that are interacting with you as outsiders, mostly customers and suppliers. And then you have inward looking processes that are for your business to do well internally or to have set practices and policies to be followed internally. So those are relating to mostly your employees, your internal stakeholders, and a lot of other things that are relating to these broad areas. So we're talking about very, very basic business processes now. We're not talking about anything that is used by bigger companies, obviously, because that is not something that we can easily adapt for smaller companies. But having said that, it doesn't always have to be very rudimentary. Obviously, having an accounting software, especially on the cloud, will help a lot because even at a pre revenue stage, you're going to have a lot of expenses. So, a lot of them might be pre incorporation expenses as well, expenses that you spend to make your product or your service ready for the market. And if you don't have a system where you're booking it properly on a consistent basis, you will lose track of what are the expenses that you've actually spent in making your company or your service or your product, in fact, market ready. Having said that, one of the most important areas that early stage startups have to focus on is definitely, and there's no doubt about this, it has to be your product or your service. What is it that you're trying to sell? You have to have an absolute understanding of your product or your service and how it is going into the market. So when I talk about outward looking processes, these are mainly to do with your customers and suppliers, customer relationship management, who is going to be the owner of your product. When you take your product, let's say it's a product company and you take your product out into the market, and if your customer needs to reach out to you in any way, for example, it could be a suggestion for complaints, to talk about the product, how do I use it, user guide manuals, anything like that, who is going to have the ownership of that? Questions like that. Questions about confidentiality, especially if you're in a business where confidentiality is of primary concern. If your product deals with financial transactions, if your product deals with sensitive records, for example, patient records, if you're in the medical industry, confidentiality becomes a big issue. And you need to think about how are you going to take care of that aspect when this product or the service goes into the market. Because you can have all the beautiful processes in the world in a business, even at a very early stage, but it will not be of any use if your product or service is not market ready, or if the market reacts really badly because of the way the product or the service was launched, and it does not get taken up in the market. That's the worst thing that can happen for a startup. So from my perspective, I always tell startups, look at your customer processes. Have you thought through every aspect of how your launch will happen, how interactions with customers are going to happen, how you're going to have a sort of problem solving in terms of if you come up against issues with customers at an early stage. So having said that, there are other processes like project management, operational project management, very important. IT security and policy is also very important. Confidentiality, which we spoke about, and all these are sort of across the organization. It runs outward as well as inward. I mean, you need to have confidentiality in place for outward processes that we spoke about. We also need to have confidentiality when we speak about employee processes. So before you employ your first person, you need to think about what are the policies that you need to have in place for them to come on board and start working with you. It doesn't have to be always laid out completely perfectly, but you need to have some framework that you have that you can work with. There are a lot of resources available online that you can check. In the UK specifically, the government websites are very robust in terms of giving you a certain guidelines on how you need to start looking at these areas. So hopefully this little clip or this little video that we have here was helpful in terms of guiding your thought process. If you need more information on how you can set this up for your business, please don't hesitate to contact me. My email ID is neethu@esthersteven.net, and we have a website, esthersteven.net, and you can even contact us through that. So see you next time. We'll speak more about probably financial processes. If you need to hear more from me about any specific area of business, feel free to email that across as well, and we'll have it in a video format come out to you. Thank you for your patient hearing, and until next time, bye bye.